Hello there, my name is Mercedes Tuma-Hansen. I'm an instructor up at North House Folk School. Up there I have the pleasure of teaching fishnet making. And besides teaching at the folk school, I also teach special programs at schools and nature centers and senior centers and history reenactments around Minnesota on different topics in Minnesota history and the environment. I love fishnet making because it's a really neat historic skill that has a strong Minnesota and Scandinavian roots. So it ties into Lake Superior up where the folk school is really well. First off, the native people in Minnesota, the Ojibwe and the Dakota, did a lot of fishing. The Ojibwe made their own fishnets, and so did Scandinavian fishermen for hundreds and hundreds of years. And actually, in my research on fishnets, I've found photographs of fishnets from ancient Mesopotamia and the ancient Egyptians that were 2,000 to 4,000 years old. One of them was made out of linen, and they were all made the exact same way as this fishnet I have here. There's just one knot that people around the world invented to make fishnets, and it's called the sheet bend, like your sheets on your bed and you're bending them. And something else fascinating is that people in South America invented an entirely different way of making fish nets, where the nets are looped and the knots aren't actually secured at each juncture. This is a knot that won't slide, it's going to stay right where it is, but their nets have some give. They're stretchy, kind of more like a knit done with really big loops and holes rather than knots holding everything steady. I love using lots of different natural materials for making nets, and that's what I'm going to tell you about for a few minutes here today. This net up above me here is made out of jute, and jute is a natural plant fiber. I get it in spools like this from the hardware store. It's really cheap and easy to come across. So, mosquito on my leg. Hopefully we got him. Otherwise, I'll be chasing mosquito during this video. Sorry. So anyway, jute is one of my favorites. It has a really neat earthy feel. I like the natural brown color. And because it holds a knot really well, your knots won't slide. It's a good material for beginners. It makes it a lot easier to control your work. I also really like using cotton. This is natural white cotton that I also buy at the hardware store in bulk because I go through a lot of it. This is 30 ply. So if I untwist the end a little bit, you can see that there's lots and lots of twists of fibers. That makes it strong because it has a lot holding it together. This cotton is also really soft. It feels nice in your hand. So this is good to use for things that you're going to be carrying. Like I've made netted grocery bags and netted laundry bags. Feels really nice, and it's washable. You can hand wash it in the sink. It's also can be dyed with, RIT dye or natural dye, so you can make it any color you wanted after you make your netting. Some other natural fibers that I harvest myself, let's see, I'm looking deciding which one to do first. This is milkweed. These are the stalks from the plants growing up and down like this out of the ground. This end is where the flowers are growing on, the skinny end. And these were in my neighbor's yard and they just sat there all winter and rotted. It's called field rutting. And so then I picked them up in the springtime, and the outer layer has, I'm trying to make it focus on that. I feel like I'm out of focus. The outer layer is a smooth, thin bark, but then if you peel that off, there's inner layers of fibers that run the whole length of the plant. And those are really strong. So you break the stalk, these are already kind of broken, and peel those hairs back. You can maybe see it here. Peel, 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 peel. And then you end up with fibers like this. Oh, try to put it in the middle. To make this into twine, you take a piece as long as you want, it can be a couple, 3 feet long. You fold it in half up at the top, like this has been folded in half, and then you twist it. So it needs to be wetted a little bit. I'll stick my fingers in my water, wet it down, just a little bit, dampen it. Then I take the top half, I twist it away from me, trying to focus on the camera. Nope, it doesn't like that. And then I bring it towards me. I twist the top piece away from me, and I bring it towards me. Twist the top piece away from me, and bring it towards me. Twist away, and bring towards me. Twist away, bring towards me. Twist away, and bring towards me. Now that's a very slow and laborious way of making twine. The way that Native people used to do it was the old lady's job. This is how I've heard the story told. Because they were sitting around camp, visiting, telling stories. And if you're not strong enough to go hiking through the woods a really long ways or go hunting, well, you can still contribute in a very useful way by making twine. They did it on their leg. You can actually lay this piece across your leg with the two legs or the two pieces separated, and with your palm roll that across your thigh, because that twists both ends and then they twist up around each other. People say, oh, you have to hold this end tight, right? Nope. The tension from the twist actually holds the twine together itself. Now when you do it on your leg, I can do it on my leg, and I can make about 4 inches at a time for every roll forward. So that's really production method. You can make a lot faster that way. And it only hurts the first couple times you do it as it rips out all your leg hair, and then you know what doesn't hurt anymore is it's just rubbing across the skin of your leg. And then even though the piece I have here is only about 2 feet long, I'm not limited in the length of my rope to 2 feet. I take some more fibers. Let's see, I've got some loose fibers over here. These are different fibers, but we can mix them. You take some fibers, and when you have a short end, this end is shorter, you lay them in your short end, and you just keep right on going. So you'll have a rope with almost no seams because those new pieces that you're adding in just blend right into the twist. See, I've started working in that new layer of fibers. Those are linen fibers. And you can barely even tell. They start right there. Looks just the same. And my rope will be very strong, no seams. I don't have to tie any new pieces in. Just keep twisting in the replacement fibers. So that's milkweed. And this is just regular milkweed that grows all over the place. You see it where it's the plant that monarchs like to lay their eggs on. There's also a plant called swamp milkweed that's related, and I've heard that plants that grow in the water are really water resistant, so are great for using as fibers for things that you want to be able to get wet, like a fishing net or something that you're tying outside. Another fiber that's really good and strong is this one. These are the stalks from a dogbane plant. They are just a weed that grows in ditches and hills. It grows all over the place. And this one is broken, and you can see those little fibers that are connecting woody pieces of the stalk. So again, smooth, thin outer bark, and peel off those inner fibers, and those are what you twine. Same way as the milkweed. And over on this side, I've got basswood bark. This one is my favorite, and this one is just magical. You see these, here maybe I can stand up. You see these long, ribbony fibers? This piece is about 6 or 8 feet long. And on the end, you can see that they're smooth, kind of like ribbons, polyester ribbons that you buy at the fabric store. But then there's also many layers. Here's one layer, here's the next layer, here's another layer. So you can peel as many layers thick as you want to make a thicker or a thinner rope. And the way to gather basswood bark is right about now in early summertime. That's when the sap is running between the bark of the tree and the heartwood of the tree, so it makes that bark loose. And basswood trees are the trees with huge heart-shaped leaves and smooth silvery bark. They grow all over Minnesota, especially up in northern Minnesota. To gather the bark, you go out into the forest, you take an axe or a knife, and down near the base of the tree, you hack the knife just a little bit into the tree, but as wide as you can get. I've heard that you can take up to a third of the tree's bark, a third of the diameter, without killing the tree, or the circumference diameter, same thing. A third of the bark without killing the tree. So I stick my axe in a little bit and then I pry my fingers under that silvery outer bark, and this ribbony inner bark is stuck to it. And then I pull back, and these fibers run up the length of the tree. So that whole strip of bark pulls off like a ribbon going up, 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 up the tree, and it'll go until it hits a juncture like a branch or an injury in the trunk of the tree, and then it pops right off, it rips off. I roll it up so it's easier to carry out of the woods, and this is what it looks like. Here you can see what the outer bark looks like. It's this silvery, smooth bark. The papery inner layers are attached inside here. Now to get these ribbony fibers for twining separate from the outer bark, you have to ret the birch bark, or excuse me, ret the basswood bark. And that's just a fancy word that means controlled rotting. So you throw it in a creek or a pond, or I do it in a bucket or a barrel, and it needs to rot for 1 to 3 weeks depending on how warm it is. If it's warmer, it goes faster. And it'll start to stink really bad and smell like a bad old outhouse, and that means it's working and then it's going perfectly. I worked with the nature center and they said, oh, we tried to ret basswood bark, but it got all stinky and rotten and we had to throw it away. And I said, no, it was perfect. That's just what it's supposed to do. So it'll get slimy and stinky, but what's happening is the bonds between the layers of bark are actually rotting before the bark itself. So then after a week or 3, these papery inner layers, excuse me, they'll just fall away from that outer bark. I rinse them off and dry them, and then they're just like this. So now I can rip off as much as I want and twist it into twine. Here's a piece of basswood rope. It's pretty thin, but incredibly strong. Basswood is really, really strong. I don't even know if you'll be able to see this, but here's a very fine piece of twine made out of basswood rope. You could even probably go fishing with that. And here's linen tow. These are the fibers of the linen plant that are left over after they've removed the finer and higher quality ones that are going to get twisted and woven into clothes. So the tow is great for making into ropes. That's where the word tow rope comes from, because linen is really strong, so when you twist it into a rope, it's strong enough to tow things with. Thanks for watching, everybody, as I got to show you a little bit about some of my favorite fibers for making into twine and into fishnets. Talk to you later.